So I was born and raised here in Hawaii. I worked here at Bishop Museum for 30 years, and so fish have been my life. As Courtney said in the beginning, I'm a total fish nerd, and I got started down that path because of sharks. Still have all the books I had when I was a kid. I made my mom, when I was 7 years old, for my bedtime story, read me Jaws. And, if you've ever read Jaws, it's not really appropriate for a 7-year-old. I remember my mom trying to gloss over aspects of it. I said, okay, that's not what it says. So that was sort of my immersive upbringing. Now, I've never been in the water with a great white. Well, let me rephrase that. I've never seen a great white shark. That doesn't mean I've never been in the water with a great white shark. A great white shark might have seen me. So I'm super jealous you got a chance to have that experience. My brother worked at Farallon Islands on white sharks for many years, and so he always tried to invite me to come out and join him, and I never had that opportunity. But one of these days, I'm sure I will see that white shark that's sneaking up on me. And yes, the big ones are the sneaky ones. And something you said is absolutely spot on. It's the little sharks. I think it's like a chihuahua. Those little black tips, those little gray reef sharks, those are the ones that are like, just like, God, back off. It's like they got some little sharks or something. Yeah, exactly. It's the little shark syndrome. But the tigers are always like totally mellow and laid back, and the bigger the sharks usually they got big because they were wise and they knew not to get into situations. And one thing I wanted to mention to you is that I actually knew your grandfather. I didn't know him very well, but many years ago when I first started using this high-tech mixed gas diving, he came by the museum. We spent an afternoon together just talking about it. He was telling me stories of black coral diving and all that kind of stuff. So he was an amazing guy. He's a legend. That's awesome. I'm honored to meet you. I was honored to meet him. So I was just going to say, tell the one story that I always tell about the first time I ever encountered a shark in the water. I was 12 years old. I was in the Galapagos Islands. My dad was a bird watcher here in Hawaii, and he got to travel around and drag me along with him, and we were in the Galapagos Islands. And I wasn't into birds. In fact, I kind of hate birds. In fact, the reason I didn't fish was to get away from birds. Because my whole upbringing was birds. He was the president of the Audubon Society. And I'm okay with birds now, but back then. So anyway, I befriended the crew on this liveaboard boat we were staying on. I didn't speak any Spanish and they didn't speak much English, but we somehow managed to communicate. I was a fish my whole childhood, so I'd go out snorkeling with them, and they'd spear fish for the dinner for the passengers on the ship that night. And they took me out on my first night dive ever, and I was so proud because I had this big flashlight. It was made by a company called Darrell Allen. I don't know if you're an old-time diver, you might remember these giant yellow flashlights. And they had these magnetic reed switches, and the reed switches were super unreliable. And so it was my first time ever on a night time in the water, and these crew of this boat were taking me out, and they pointed out these sleeping white-tip sharks under a rock, and I was kind of like nervous. And we're swimming along, and I'm kind of chilling, and then I shine my light up, and there's this hammerhead shark about this wide, about 7 feet away, coming straight for me, and I froze in like sheer terror, and just then the reed switch kicked out on my light and went to pitch black. I had no idea if it lasted like 5 seconds or 15 minutes or what. It seemed like an absolute eternity, but I couldn't move. And suddenly the light just flipped back in again, and there was absolutely nothing in the water. So I don't know where that shark went. I don't know what it was thinking, but it was my first encounter, with a real shark in the water. And I gotta say, these guys captured it really well. I mean, do not watch Shark Week if you're interested in learning about sharks. Shark Week's about entertainment, not about education. If you want to understand sharks, you have to be in the water with them. And I've been in the water many different kinds of sharks all over the world. And what they have said tonight is spot on exactly right, consistent with my own experience. So, but anyway, why don't you open it up to any questions you have for us, or if you've got other stories? Yeah, go ahead.
I read, I guess a week or so ago, that a new species of shark was discovered off Greenland. And very old. They estimated it might have been born as far back as 1600. It's still alive.
So I know the story you're talking about. It wasn't actually a new species of shark. It was a Greenland shark. And the study that just came out, and this was amazing. Courtney mentioned I was up diving in Lake Hua. I was up with Sylvia Earle, and we were talking about this as well, and she was flabbergasted by this. It just came out this last week. They did a study, and they found that green lion sharks live up to 400 years, maybe even longer. It's the oldest animal known of any animal. And to me, that wasn't even the most amazing thing. And this was the thing that still gives me chicken skin. They don't think they even become reproductively mature until they're 150 years old. Can you imagine that? 150 years before you're ready to start being sharp. And I think that might be the story you're talking about. And it's one of the most astonishing things I've ever heard, but it has tremendous conservation implications because, you know, in 150 years, we could wipe out the entire population of Greenland sharks before they ever even have a chance to be old enough to reproduce. And that's one of the reasons why sharks are so threatened, is they do have long life cycles and long gestation periods. So they need a lot of time to recover. And when they hurt the populations as much as they have been hurt, it doesn't take a few years for them to bounce back. It takes a few decades, maybe even more for them to bounce back. So that's an important point.
I'd like to ask you a question. Did you guys see boats out next to Lahua Rock when you guys were out there?
There were several snorkel boats out there. Yeah.
Okay, well, I was there. I can't believe I was actually that close
You
to
were
Sylvia Earle. I didn't get a chance to meet her. Yeah, I was out there that day. I saw you guys down on the rocks and just checking out the monk seals.
Did you guys ever head up that way, or you always see them on your shore?
Just right in that little
No, you don't know the area well. You know, when you know the area and you know the individual sharks, I know you don't give them names, and that's a very, good respectful thing to do, but I'll bet you recognize them.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. And I was going to ask you, how often do you get, like, new guys, showing up? Like, you see the same, usual suspects, and then all of a sudden you got somebody new.
Every now and then we do. We have some that show up and they'll get picked on from the regulars.
Oh, really?
A lot of new Galapagos. And usually with size, what we see is the biggest one will kind of be held at the top, and he'll kind of control the pack. So size does matter.
It's for Kaiwi, like seasonal wise, what kind of sharks do you see time of year, more or less?
I would say we're starting to come back up into the sandbar sharks time, and that goes through December. And then we have like a little bit of a break. I can't remember if it's January or February, but then it transitions to Galapagos, and then Galapagos will be through now, and then tigers will come around and kind of ruin the whole program, and then they'll go back to sandbars. But it goes back and forth.
Do you ever see white sharks?
We have not seen a white shark yet.
Do you think one's seen you?
Maybe. You never know. We don't have walls out there, so anything can come in at any time.
So Jennifer, in the area where you guys were working, is there like a set of known white sharks?
Yeah, there is. There's residential sharks there. And they're actually, according to seasonal actually, and summertime, in fact, is an amazing relationship between people. So people and these sharks. See, this is a small seal island. This is a small version of the seal island that you find in False Bay, in Mossel Bay there. And we were the only people out there working. But this seal island is literally only about 600 yards from the most popular swimming beach during holiday season there in Mossel Bay. And there's never been a death, a known cause death by a shark there in Mossel Bay. And you have, so many sharks there. Except for one woman in 1990 who decided to do a scuba dive at Seal Island during peak winter season, peak feeding season. So, I mean, I just kind of consider that Darwin, but I don't know. But these sharks would be there during the winter season, and during the winter season, the sharks are there, and all the holiday people have gone and left. During the summer season, the waters warm up actually, and the sharks leave. They go to outer reef systems. It gets a little bit too warm for them. And this is when all the bathers and swimmers are there. And not only that, but this is also during the time when the seals mate and give birth. So they're able to replenish their population as the sharks are gone. And to me, that is just such a magical thing, how it works like that, and the relationship that's there. And that things, it just is really an indicator, eye-opening thing that things are just the way that they're supposed to be without our influence. And I also just wanted to tell you guys too, I did experience a hard time with interaction with the sharks in cages, when it comes to cages, when it comes to using baited things, as to whether or not that is okay to do. In my mind, them being in their natural environment with no outside stimulations and stuff is correct in my mind for conservation purposes. And I mean, in all honesty, this is the first time I'm admitting it, really, but I was given an opportunity, I followed through with it, but I really appreciate that, just going out there and seeing the sharks, giving people an experience in just their natural environment without the cage and all that stuff, because it has an effect on them, I believe, after what I've seen personally. So, yeah, I think what you guys are doing is really cool.
Talk a little bit about reconciling loving and respecting sharks and other fish, and also being a fisher.
So the question was basically, how does he reconcile, the aspect of protecting the sharks while also being a fisherman at the same time? That's a question I can also address too, but I'll let you.
Well, I grew up that way to fish, and it's like, to me, the fishermen are the ones who are doing the most conservation work. If you take away from your whole house, you have to give it time to replenish. I don't know.
So yeah, along those lines, the kind of fishing he does, like it's more of a subsistence sort of fishing. It's not like big long lines over hundreds of miles catching bluefin tuna, which is a different story, or gill nets and things like that. But I grew up diving with people who were all spearfishing. I'm not so much for two reasons. One, I don't really like fish all that much to eat, and sometimes I'm stuck on islands and I have to eat the fish, and a lot of my friends would call that heaven, but it's a little. But also I'm just horrible at it. I could never shoot, grow outside of a barn. I'm just so bad at it. But I do see that side of the world, and speaking as someone who's sort of dedicated his life to the conservation of the sea and the oceans, believe me, the kind of fishing they do is not the problem. That's actually one species interacting with other species in a way that's just as natural as a shark eating its prey. So I don't see any conflict there. I mean, I see people have respect for the ocean, and that's what matters, and that's what ends up perpetuating, that respect, and that's what ends up protecting the ocean. It's sort of the exploitative aspect of it that causes the real problem. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but that's how I see that reconciliation in my mind. It's
Just wondering if there was some cultural.
I like fish.
Your mind is
Yeah, it's just doing the things or using the skills that, my dad and grandfather gave us. It's like...
One thing everybody here can do to help the sharks is email Senator Hirano and tell her to get on board with the expansion of Papahanau'o Kuakea, because she's holding back and Barack isn't gonna sign it till she comes forward and supports it.
Yeah, so just to give you a little more context on that, I've been pretty much involved with that, is we have a monument up in the northwestern Hawaiian Islands. It goes out 50 miles from the land areas up there from the islands, and there's a proposal initiated by Native Hawaiians and very strongly backed by the scientific community and conservation community to expand that out to the full 200-mile exclusive economic zone. And it's kind of a no-brainer. It really needs to get done. And I'm pretty sure President Obama is going to do the right thing regardless of what Senator Romano does, but I think you're absolutely right. We do need to make sure our politicians understand how important it is. And the reason I'm making this point in this context is one of the main reasons for the need for that protection. The original protection was all about coral reefs, you know, and so you protect the coral reefs. And coral reefs are wonderful, and that's what I study, that's my passion. But, you know, the coral reefs are in jeopardy in ways that, you know, from climate change that are much bigger issues. What the expansion will do is protect sharks. The sharks populations that occupy that zone outside of 50 miles, in fact, if they could, they should expand it beyond 200, but of course we have no jurisdiction for it. But the sharks are one of the main reasons why I'm a very strong supporter of it, because we have not just the sharks, you know, people see, but, you know, I was up in the northwestern Hawaiian Islands earlier this year, and we see lots of sharks, especially Galapagos. We counted over 100 sharks, you know, on some of our decompressions. We do these deep dives, and it takes us hours to get back to the surface, and we're in that environment. But we got down to the bottom, and I saw this shark off in the distance, and I thought, well, that's weird, that Galapagos shark is staying far away. I wonder what's with that. And it slowly started working its way in. As it got closer, I saw it wasn't a Galapagos shark, it was a thresher shark. Who in this room knows what a thresher shark is? Yeah, so the thresher shark is that shark you see that's got that great big enormous tail. The tail is as long as the body. And it's the most magnificent thing you'll ever see. And divers very rarely get to see them. But they're apparently very common. Where are they common? They're out in the blue water where the divers don't go. So the expansion of the monument is necessary for protection of species. There was a question back here, yeah.
Yes. Okay. Oh, that was a wonderful presentation. I'm so impressed. And actually, as you talked about your diving tours, I felt like, gee, I'd be too scared to do it. You know, maybe because I don't know whether I could be that calm. But you know, I actually swam with sharks 2 times. One was in Galapagos. When you mentioned Galapagos, that reminded me that we were a group of 4 from Hawaii with a group of mainlanders, and we were the only 4 who could snorkel. So the captain of the boat said, I'll take you to where the sharks are. So he took us to where the sharks were, and we swam and saw a shark. The shark completely disregarded us, and we felt completely safe. Okay, and then when we were in, not Tahiti, but not Moorea, but next to Moorea, they actually have tours. Any ordinary tourist, you don't even have to be able to snorkel. They take you out on the boat, and the water is clear as can be, beautiful water, and the water is maybe about, you can stand on the sand, and the sharks are there, and they're swimming with you. And everyone, some people did not, but I certainly felt confident to get in because they said they've never had any shark attack. You know, what is that gives that particular locale, both in Galapagos and in that island, to be able to say they've never had a shark attack?
It's not just those locales, that's kind of the way it is everywhere. The shark attacks are an anomaly. That's the weird thing, is when the sharks happen. It's not like, why aren't more people attacked by sharks? The question is, when those weird cases happens.
Well, I lived in Lanikai for many years, and of course we have the famous one, you know?
Really weird.
Yeah, and so that builds a lot of
But
fear.
think about it, you know, your chances of being killed by a fallen coconut are bigger than being hit by a shark. You know, I mean, there's a long list of things. More pigs in the U.S. kill people than sharks. And so I think the perception is that sharks are these like tigers and lions and predators and dinosaurs, and they're out to get you. And they're just not. So.
But in the first Lanikai incident, the shark bit that boy's surfboard, you know?
So that happens sometimes, and I think there's basically 2 scenarios, especially involving the tigers. Maybe you can weigh in on this, but the 2 scenarios are, one, mistaken identity, which usually involves murky water or confusing circumstances for the shark. And that's maybe why sharks sometimes attack surfers. They look like seals or turtles up at the surface. And the other is, every once in a while you get like a big tiger especially that's injured in some way, and it's really skinny. You know, most people when they see a big fat tiger shark, it's so ominous that they're intimidated. You know, when I see a big fat tiger shark, I get totally relaxed. He's well fed. When you see those long, skinny tadpole-looking tigers, that's when I get a little edgy, right? I mean, not all. Yeah, Yeah, so I think sometimes an injured shark's more likely to be desperate for any kind of food and get whatever it can get. So I guess my point is that like the Galapagos your experience, like that place in French Polynesia your experience, that's been my experience everywhere I've
I
been.
just wondered whether, what happened, and I addressed it to you, is that the confidence that you have because the boat owner said it's not going to happen, is that what made it not happen? Or, you know?
Well, where we go, there's no food source. It's completely clean water.
Uh-huh.
So what are the reasons that they just come up and bite us?
Nobody got hurt. I felt so confident too. Okay.
I have a question. What do you guys think is the reason that the tiger sharks that you're getting the seasonal influx up in Bolivar, and what's kind of the timeline for that, if you guys see them?
I don't know, like, for the most part, August through November we see them, and then we'll see them sporadically here and there. But, I've seen them very close to shore. That's where they kind of live. I mean, from the 300-foot depth, I mean, I'm sure they go outside of that, but 300 to shore is where they typically mostly go. Correct me if I'm wrong, I think they have about a 4-month period where they're pregnant or they just don't eat, and then when they're ready to eat, it's today I'm eating.
You had mentioned seasonality of the white sharks. Were there high season and low season, or are they just different sharks at different times?
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely just a high season and low season. And as the water's warmed up during the summer months, we actually had several months where the sharks, or a couple months where the sharks were just completely gone. We weren't doing tours or anything like that. Really amazing thing to realize about that, though, is the existence of an underwater communication system. And there's other animals that, if these other animals showed up, such as orcas or large superpods of dolphins, these sharks would disappear 2 days before they come through. They know that there's danger coming. And in Mossel Bay, you actually find a lot of juvenile sharks there. It's considered to be, for great whites, anywhere between 2 and 4 meters. They're smaller sharks. They're kind of, just getting their bearings and everything on things. And so if they, if something did come through, they'd know. They'd be gone. And it was always like the really, really tiny sharks that would come back at first. Almost kind of like they didn't know better. And they'd be really darty and just kind of skittish. But yeah, then once the bigger sharks start showing up and stuff, it's more of you can expect more of the population to start coming back at that point. But yeah, it's definitely just kind of high and low. Summer season, there, which is exactly opposite of our seasons. It was a low time for them.
So that reminds me of a story I mentioned before. My brother worked on white sharks out in the Farallon Islands. Now he's not a shark guy. I was the shark guy in the family. My brother was yet another bird person. So he was actually out at the Farallon Islands watching birds. So if you're a bird watcher, you got these big binoculars and you're out in these rocky islands, and then you see a big flock of birds and a red patch in the water, and you go, oh, look at that, there's a white shark eating a seal. And they write it down, and pretty soon they had the largest data set of what natural predation of white sharks on sea lions, and that's what he did out there. But, so they had years and years and years, and they had a very strong seasonal pattern. And something you mentioned reminded me of the story where one year, it said like every year, I forget what it was, like September, October is where you see the first shark attack, and then they slowly ramp up, and then they peak in like November or whatever it is, I forget exactly the months. But this one particular year, it was starting out the normal track, and the sharks' attacks on the sea lions were showing up at the normal pace. And then all of a sudden, and this made the news, it was all over international news, I was in Hong Kong when I heard about it. An orca came and ate a great white shark, and it was filmed. It was actually filmed by my brother. It was, this film was on TV. This was like in the late 90s. And, so an orca came and ate a great white shark. And what was really interesting is From that day forward, there wasn't a single sighting of a white shark anywhere in the Faroe Islands. So we have years and years and years of this very characteristic peak, 80, 100 attacks recorded every year. They had their first maybe half dozen going up the normal tradition, and then 0 for the whole rest of the years of the sharks. No, they are not the top of the food chain. Well, we are, of course, but then under us come the orcas and then come the sharks.
How did the orca get the great white? Did it have a pod of orcas?
I guess so. I don't think they filmed the actual attack. What they saw was all the blood in the water, and they thought it was a white shark attacking the sea lion. They went over and filmed them like they normally do with these pole cams. They stick the camera in the water, and whoa, it's an orca eating a shark, not a shark eating the sea lion.
Couple more questions?
Yeah.
How do you have to determine who the sharks are, the black determine?
I haven't seen it, but I'm sure they do.
What was the question?
Do the sharks go after the turtles?
Yes, they do, because we have one in our bay, it lost its left flipper,
Mm.
so he was only 3.
Could have been from a fishing net also. I mean, it's all theory too.
We've seen a tiger eating a turtle from the boat, North Shore, Kauai.
This one is for you. Have you ever seen any shark babies? Ever? Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Me? I've seen some small ones about this big. Yeah, it's little sandbars. But they're growing up now. They're kind of like,
They're punks when they're little, and then they kind of
yeah, they have little scars. Usually the ones that are scarred up more are the scrappy ones.
I've seen baby gray reef sharks in Pohnpei, and you can still see the umbilical scar. She was like born like a couple weeks earlier. And then I've seen baby blacktip sharks on the sand flats at Christmas Island. Did I see baby white shark? How big is the baby white shark?
In all honesty, I mean, they're said to be, a meter long at birth.
So they're starting off.
And they've discovered anywhere from 2 to 12 pups within the mother. And this is these are all ranging sizes though, but they also practice intrauterine cannibalism, so they're not really, this is where they eat their fellow roommates, yes. They start out in this nature really young, within the womb, and so, yeah, they're not really sure how many born at one time. I mean, nobody's ever seen a great white give birth or make it thus far, which I think is awesome. I'm kind of rooting for them that it stays that way. For some reason, some kind of way.
To me, shark research has only been around since like the 1950s.
Yeah, it's serious.
So, in the term of it, 400 years, let's say they've been around, and from 1950, there's 60 years now. So that's not even a fingernail on this big spectrum. So, I think all the theories and everything, all of research and everything, it just kind of, it's all theories right now.
Slowly catching up.
Yeah, there's just a lot to learn out there.
Actually, I do have to take that back because, if research, promotes the, conservation aspect and discovery of places that can be protected where nurseries and stuff are happening, then I'm definitely pro. Discovering, mating, and birthing, practices.
Hawaii Kai uses a nursery for hammerheads.
Mm.
It's like the we used to go fishing on the flats and we find all these baby hammerheads in the water.
Yeah, hammerheads do get Kaiwi Berry also. Lots and lots of little baby hammerheads.
They like brackish water, huh?
Yeah, that's for the pups. In the back.
I just kind of want to touch on Kaiwi, as a person and what they do. My name's Heath. I grew up with Kaiwi as well as some of the other people here, and it's really cool to have one of our friends who's not a scientist. He wasn't go to school for marine biology or something like that, to show us, because we're you kind of see him as the same person, and he's grown up through natural experience and brought us on his tour and kind of turned the lead for us. And it's a cool way that he's showing the community around him that sharks are, a totally different side of not to be afraid and to educate. And I don't know, personally, it's really touching for Kaiwi to be able to put that impact on the North Shore community, and it's really cool to see how far along they've come with that. And I just wanted to touch on that. I thought that was really cool, and I'm stoked that he's doing that for himself with his brother.
And I agree. We're almost out of time. We'll take one more question.
You know, I was on the Big Island about a month ago, and I was surprised to see a picture that a photographer had taken there of a whale shark, which she had encountered somewhere around the Big Island. So what is your knowledge of the frequency or timing of whale sharks around the
So
water?
they do show up here from time to time. Have you guys ever seen whale sharks?
No, other companies have, though, yeah.
I got a funny story. The first whale shark I saw, I was diving off Lanai at like 80 feet, and I was with another graduate student. I was a graduate student at the time, and you know, and I'm down there, and I have this 100mm macro lens on my camera. I'm trying to take pictures of bermuda rays and stuff, right? So I'm down there in the rocks, and then my friend starts banging on his tank. Bang, 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 bang. And I look at him, like, oh no, what's going on? He starts frantically pointing out to sea. And I'm like, what? And this like 6-foot hammerhead sort of glides by. I'm like, ah, whatever. I can't picture that. That's cool. I've seen hammers all the time. So I go back and take my pictures, and then like 5 minutes later, bang, 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 bang. I'm like, yeah, I know. And I turn around and look at him, and he's pointing above my head. And I'm like, all right. And I look up, and I'm seeing a silhouette. And if you know what a tiger shark looks like in silhouette, it's got a big flat nose. I see this, what looked like a 40-foot tiger shark directly over my head. And I just sort of melted into the reef. And it was like, you know, this spiritual moment of like, I'm going to die. And as it just glided past, I could see the white spots on its back. So I knew it was a whale shark. And I'm sitting there with my 100mm lens, like thinking, oh, I can take a picture of its eyeball. But it was like one of the most cool and scary and exhilarating and awesome moments I've ever had. It's in the water. And that says a lot. I've had a lot of moments in the water, which are pretty good stories. But that was one of the better ones. And that's the only time I've ever seen a whale shark. But I do know they do show up from time to time around Hawaii. All right, well, thank you guys, everybody. This has been a lot of fun.